able to access the recordings that all work out perfectly. You have access to it. You can also, if you follow the link, you actually can also see the recording from the other classes. So I think it should be easily accessible. It should be to some extent consistent between both classes. So I try to practice time management that makes sense in that regard. And we can actually stop the video, right? Good. Okay. So please download 2 files for now. So there's a file that is the PowerPoint presentation, that's the actual lecture, and then there's an Excel file that is essentially the example we're going to discuss today. So we've spoken now about the different kinds of data. What do you remember about data? And can anybody tell me what a ratio variable is? What kind of variable? Madeleine? Madeleine? Could you? Okay. Hi. Can you explain what the ratio variable is?
Sorry.
No. Do you remember what a continuous variable is? Do you remember the difference between a continuous variable and a categorical variable?
I also missed the possible.
Okay. Anybody else? What's the difference between a continuous and a categorical variable in broad terms? So you have with continuous variable, you have data where variable, where value in that variable can take on any value. And this is a distinction to a categorical variable, where you essentially you have either a nominal variable or an ordinal variable, where a nominal variable takes on as a value a predefined name. So it's in a predefined category, as opposed to an ordinal variable that has a certain order. A certain predefined category that is in a certain order. As the example, we had the cookies, where we had the name of the cookie, which is a nominal variable. Then we had the ranking of the cookies. How much do you like those cookies on the scale from 1 to 10? That's an ordinal variable. Then you have the temperature of the cookie, which essentially would be an interval variable, where 0 is just a random number, an arbitrary number on the scale of possible values. And the ratio variable, which essentially has a meaningful 0, that means it basically starts with 0, can't take a negative value, and essentially in the cookie example, it would be the number of cookies left in the cookie jar. So now when you try to translate this into frequency distributions, and that's the simplest form essentially of aggregating data. You try to kind of determine how many times a certain number has appeared. And this is called a so-called frequency table. So when you have, let's say you have a certain number of temperatures you're interested in. So there are some hot cookies, there are not so hot cookies, and there are cold cookies, frozen cookies. You quantify the number of cookies in the respective category. So this is essentially what you would then kind of characterize using frequency table. So how often do I have a cookie at 20 degrees Celsius? How often do I have a cookie at 10 degrees Celsius? And how often do I have a cookie at 5 degrees Celsius fresh out the fridge? Fresh out of the fridge. If you have a continuous spectrum of these values, where you basically have a certain frequency for, you can group them together, and you group them from 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, 5 to 10 degrees Celsius, 10 to 15, and 15 to 20. So this is a grouped frequency table where you quantify the frequency for each entry in certain predefined groupings. And this is what we essentially will be doing today. We're gonna create a frequency table. We're gonna create a grouped frequency table. and then depict that in the form of a frequency histogram, where histogram is essentially the graphical way of depicting this data, where basically you show the distribution of the occurrence of each individual value in your data over in a graphical way over the entire spectrum of your data. And I will discuss later what that means. So essentially, the frequency distribution per se describes the pattern of a set of numbers by displaying a count or a proportion for each of the possible value of a variable. So when you think of it, you have a graph that is on the y-axis, you have the counts, whereas on the x-axis, you have the entire range of your data. And you show for each value that occurs in your data set, you show the frequency of that value. Simple, right? It's considerably simple, and we will play around with that. Essentially, you do that to quantify the occurrence of each individual raw score, and that's each individual entry. So if you have 20 cookies, 20 of these cookies contribute one temperature value to your data set. So each of the cookies, and we've done that with the Stroop point, right? So you had 20 participants that did the Stroop test before and after. So you had 20 individual raw scores, and all of this had a certain time. So now you could quantify the occurrence of each time. So 3 participants took 10 seconds, 2 participants took 11 seconds, 1 took 13 seconds. So you characterize the occurrence of each value. And this essentially you're doing in the simplest form with developing a frequency table. A frequency table is essentially a table that contains all the possible values. So switching here now to our Excel spreadsheet, this would essentially be in the most easiest way done by just looking at your data. So these are the examples. This is the example we're going to talk about today. So we have here some of the countries of the world, those with volcanoes on their soil. And all of these volcanoes, all of these countries have a certain number of volcanoes. So each of these countries do have a certain number of volcanoes. So Antarctica has only 1 volcano, Argentina has 1, Australia has 4, Cameroon has 2, Chile has 10, Congo has 2, Ecuador has 12. And now I'm curious, would you have guessed that actually one of the leading countries is the United States with 81 volcanoes? I was quite ignorant to that, and I did not know that. I don't know who of you may have known that. I didn't. 81 volcanoes, quite a bit. I think Hawaii is a little bit the confounder. I think they have quite a few. Good. United Kingdom was 4, also was not really on my radar. Okay. So you want to characterize now the occurrence of each value in your data set. So this is the data set with 2 variables. You have here country as a clearly categorical variable, and it's a nominal variable because it's a name. Then we have here the count, which is
Number of volcanoes.
Exactly, yes. But is it a ratio variable or an interval variable? Does it have a meaningful 0?
Yeah.
Exactly, it does. And that makes it a ratio variable. Exactly. Meaningful 0, count, always ratio. Good. So first you want to find out what is the range of my data. So you select your entire data set from 1 to 56. And you basically go again, just like we did in the past already. So we've learned that already, how to sort data. So you basically go on data, you go on sort, and it's important that you select here, my list has headers, because you selected the headers, right? So when you select the entire thing, these are the headers. Country and count are essentially the headers. So if you go on sort, you sort them by column, and here you can define which column you want to base your sorting order on, and you sort them as per count. Then you sort them on values, and then on the last tab, you can sort them either from smallest to largest, or from largest to smallest. We leave it at smallest to largest, please. And then if you click OK,
Which column do you click?
count. So if you, so just think of counting, right? If you count them by the country, it would count it from A to Z. If you count it by count and the numerical value, it will count them as per the quantity of volcanoes in the country.
And it's smallest to largest.
From smallest to largest, please, yeah. For a reason you will see in a second. Okay, so now we want to have a frequency table. So now what are our values? So we know that here the smallest number, so it's only volcano containing countries, so that the minimal value is 1. If you go at the very end, and you can do that by command and just pressing the down cursor, then it goes to the very last entry in your column. Somebody did not sort well. Is that possible? Okay, so we need to sort again. Smallest to largest, no, yeah. So Vanuatu was a bit of an outlier down there. So the largest number here is 81. So we have now quite a jump. So we will focus our analysis only up until Papua New Guinea with 17. So this is our highest value. This is, yes.
Sorry, can you just show how to sort it again? I can't
Yeah, sure.
so well.
Okay. Yes. In green. I know.
Yeah.
So colleague Diego from IT is working on that, and I hope he's going to find a solution. I guess it's a problem with the projector, or it's the cable, I'm not sure. Okay, so you sort both columns. Yeah, you select both columns. You go and sort. You select column count.
Yeah.
So you,
Wait, I don't see that. I just select both columns. From the time I pick it, it keeps making the whole thing look like a country. Or if you keep the
just if you want to select an entire column, you can just click here on A and B. You see this? You just click on these two, and it will select the entire column, both columns, all the way down. Wonderful. I have some unpaid teaching assistants. That's wonderful. Okay. So once you have selected those two columns, you go and sort. Make sure that my list has headers is selected on the right top, and then you sort them as per count and values. Still any problems? Sort is usually on the tab data, and there you go straight down. There's it's labeled in different ways. It's usually, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, sorted on count, make sure my list has headers is selected, sorted from smallest to largest. Okay, so let's carry on. Okay, smallest entry is 1. The highest, and this is only our definition, we're saying we're not going further than 17 because I'm not gonna deal with 81. So this is just too much of a gap. So we're gonna take 17. So we have now frequency. We have now the actual value, and we have the frequency in the for the respective value. And so now you have value 1, 2, 3, and now you can essentially do it just in the same fashion we did in the past. You go where the cursor changes, and you're pulling that out until you're at 17. So you have 1 to 17 now as a list here on the side. Yeah. Let's go a little out. So you write 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Then you go here in the right lower corner of the selected areas, and then you just pull it down. If you have a series, if you have any value series, data series commenced with 1, 2, 3, and you start pulling it down, it will automatically complete the series. Yes.
When I did that, it automatically is a whole row of one.
Okay, then did you do 1, 2, 3? Did you select 1, 2, 3? You need to select 1, 2, 3, and Excel needs to recognize it's a data series and a value series. Then it will complete it. Okay? We're on board with that?
We're just finishing the first step. Can you do that again? I'm so sorry. Sorry.
No, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Yeah, so this is why you please watch the video where I'm explaining all these things. I have a video posted. Please watch that video. It's advantageous that you get a bit of a head start with Excel. And trust me, you will need Excel. This is not useless knowledge. This is definitely something that will haunt you moving forward. So I'm trying to really help you out a bit. Yes. You type 1, 2, 3. Then you select 1, 2, 3, and then you go to the lower right corner of the 3, and then you start pulling, and then it will automatically complete the series. Okay? And you do that until 17. That I don't know. You basically you just go until 17. Everything below 17 you will not need. That's fine. Just delete the 18 then. Okay, so now we have. So it's so interesting to me that you don't learn Excel in high school. You did not at all. This is. Yeah. 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 Yes. Okay, can we focus on one conversation? Yes, please. Yes. Okay, once again, anybody problem with sorting? No. Good. We all have sorted data now. Good. Still sorting problems? Okay. Both columns, you select both columns. You go on data, on the tab data. You go on sort. You select my list has headers. Sort is on the tab data.
Okay.
Yeah. You go on sort. You sort on column count. You go from smallest to largest. Make sure that my list has headers is selected.
Okay.
Good. Then you sorted it. It's now sorted by the smallest value to the largest value. Then you go in line E, you create value and frequency as headers. You create 2 rows below value, which is 1, 2, 3. You select 1, 2, 3. And then you go to the right lower corner where the cursor changes, and you're pulling that down until you reach 17. Good. Once you have done that, and now it's getting a little trickier. So what you want to achieve now, you want to list here one number. You want to know how often one has occurred. And if you look here on the left, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 entries. You have 14 ones. So your count, your frequency count is 14. Good? Simple, right? So now you can do this also differently. Now we're getting to the next function. This is the function. Well, so the first one we have individually counted. And I'm going to show you a second way that is a little easier. Well, not at first, but on the long run, it's easier. And this is a function called count if. So you can tell Excel to count for you. You can basically say count these entries, and it will tell you these are 4 entries, right? So I selected 4 entries, and I used the count function to say count these entries.
Wait, how did you?
You click on the cell, you write equal sign, count, parentheses, then I select how many entries you want to calculate. You close the parentheses and you press enter, it's going to calculate, or it's counting for you.
You have to click the choose if you're doing.
You have to choose which one you want it to count. So now this gets even better, because if you, for example, you have 1, then you have 1, then you have 1 and 1. So let's see, you have a discontinuous data row like this, where you have some empty spots, and you do count. Let's do count of these. It will only count those with an actual entry. Useful function, right? Makes sense. Yes.
Why is it 32 for 2?
So it gives you those cells, the number of cells with a valid entry. So, well, but there are only 4 numbers, right? Even if it's dispersed over 6 rows, it will only count those with an actual entry.
Yeah, but for the count of the number of volcanoes, there's 2, and from 16 until 27.
Yep.
So why is the frequency 4?
Because I only selected 4 cells.
Oh, and when you select them, if I select mine,
It gives you the count of valid entries. That's how the function is programmed. So you essentially, you get, even if you have empty cells in between your entries, it will only count those with valid entries. Why is that important? Because sometimes you have scenarios where this will be the case. And now we're digging a little deeper. So count has a second version, a little bit more of an advanced version. And it's called count if. And count if will want to have a certain criterion. So you have a range, and the range is clear, right? The range is from B2, which is the cell where our data series starts, all the way down to the last entry, which is 17, which we defined as our maximum, which is 52, right? So our criterion is B2 colon B52. You see? So it will select this B2 colon B52. It will select the entire column all the way down. So let's go back up.
can you repeat that again?
So the formula is count if. So it's as simple as count if. Count if, parentheses, B2 to B52, colon stands for 2, comma, and now you give it the criterion. And the criterion now is, stands for the value 2, right? So the criterion is 2. It's that simple. And now you know that there are 12 entries with 2. It's a useful function, right? I hope you agree. I found it very useful. Yes, please.
So that's just so you don't have to highlight all the ones, just put it in. That's better.
Exactly. So,
Wait, so
yes.
if you use the count if function with
Yep.
all the cells and you put in the frequency, like for whatever value, I have to do 4 or 5, whatever value,
Yep.
it will always be right. I
Uh,
don't have to click, let's say, all, like for the first count function, you have to scroll over all the ones to put in there.
well, now you know the range, right?
So
So
if you have the range, you don't have to.
if you have the range, you don't have to. Well, we're getting there step by step. Stepwise, we're gonna go and make it as simple as it could become, because there are modifications. The count if is like, let your imagination flow what you can do with this formula. This is a very powerful formula. If you master it, you basically you save yourself a lot of work. Okay, so now we want to go a step further. So now we know that count if, we can define the criterion. We can say, okay, so B2 to B52 was in count if with the criterion of 2, count all the 2s. Okay, good. You can make this a little bit more advanced by saying equal sign, count if, and now the range is still B2 to B52, right? B2 colon B52, comma, and the criterion we're going to change now to 3, but the 3 is also right here in our frequency table, right? So we have that value actually here. You remember when I talked about hard coding and soft coding? Never hard code, because soft coding is actually going to make your life easier. So now we soft code now our E4 as our criterion. We close the parentheses and we get the number of 3s. We're saying equal sign count if parentheses B2 to B52, comma E4, which is our 3.
Not letting me do it.
We'll try again. Try again. Try again. Equal sign count if parentheses B2 $B52, comma that cell where your 3 is. You have to write well, both is fine.
You can just click the cell.
You can just click the cell. If you're more comfortable with that, that's fine too. If you close the parentheses, this will give you the value 4. So now just once again, you remember last time when we locked the cell. You remember that? We're locking the column with a $sign. We're locking the cell with a $sign.
Wait, can you go from the locking part?
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Gotta go very slow. So, yes.
Sorry, just a question for the function without the criteria.
Yep.
The equal count if parentheses B2 colon B52 parentheses.
Count if without the criterion is not going to work. Yeah, it gives you.
It needs criteria for that.
It needs a criterion, yes.
And what is it, can you explain what the criteria does?
It basically it scans. So you remember count only takes the valid entries, regardless of how many empty cells. Count if only counts those with the criterion met. So if you say 4, it's going to count all the 4s.
And you say like E4, well, what does that criteria do?
Not sure important.
B2, B52.
Well, it takes the value from that cell. It takes the value and defines that value in the cell as the criterion. Yep. Yes.
Like 1 or 2 or 3, not E1.
Well, E1 or no, E2 would be 1. So it basically, what Excel will do. Can we focus on one conversation, please, ladies? So we're taking the value of that cell and defining that as the criterion. So E4 goes to E4. Excel will go to E4, see what the value in here is, and will accept that as the criterion. So it's basically this E4 is the same thing as writing 2, or in that case here 3. It queries the value from that cell.
Oh, but then you can draft it.
This is where we're going, right? Because now we're soft coding it, and now we're automatizing all the way down, because you don't want to do this repetitive process because you're lazy and you want to basically make it as easy as possible. This is why you need to soft code. So now when we go to B2, so when you think of this formula and you want to pull it down and iteratively have the formula do this work for you, what do you want to change? What do you want to change automatically? What do you want to not change automatically? Yes.
You want the B2 to be 56 to stay the same, but you want to change the transmitter.
Bingo. Exactly. And that's exactly the answer. This is what you're doing. You logically, you want to log in your data range, but you want to softly go through the entire range of different values and query each of these values in your row. In your row. And this is essentially what we're doing. So we're going in here. We're going to count if B2, B, $B2, $2, the column we leave alone, then we do $B, $52, and we're pressing enter. Nothing happens. I like the skeptic looks. Okay, so we have $B, $2, colon. Well, I need to clean it. Hold on. Wait, hold on. I have a whiteboard app somewhere. Whiteboard. Yes, here we go. All right. Okay, mode.
Are you just putting a dollar sign between them?
Okay, so we have B2, no? This B2. No, we're not doing this. Yeah, okay, Word. All right. Okay. Yeah, I have a whiteboard app. Hold on. We're gonna do this with 26. So what we're doing is $B. I'm not writing a whiteboard. $B, $2, colon $B, $52. Hmm? Yes, you do equals count if parentheses $B, $2, colon $B, $52. So this is your range. This is, yes. Okay, so the code is like this. It's equal count if $B, $2, $B, $52. Criterion is now E4, for example, if you want. So if you go here on E4, you want to define this, you're gonna use, this whiteboard is useless. This is the code for your 3 volcanoes. Count.
If you drag it, change it.
Yep. Make sure to log in the range and soft code that cell. Yes.
Why would we do this whole big one when we can just do count it and then column and then put the one we want to see?
Because it would shift it.
Because if you drag that down, all the numbers that you want is supposed to be showing. Saying the line, like, so I just used it that and then it will be all done.
Okay. With this formula,
Yeah, I just put that. Did you get $B done?
just make sure it's the same.
No, because you're-
Yeah.
What did the dollar signs do?
The $sign locks in the range.
Dollar sign always locked in.
Correct. Correct. So what you do, make,
That's called hard coding.
Hmm?
That's called hard coding.
that's soft coding.
Then locking in is soft coding.
Now the soft coding is hard coding, you're right. This part that you basically flexibly can take a different value, that's soft coding. Yeah. Did you find your error?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yes.
Mine didn't list all of them, it just did that one.
Which one did you?
Oh,
Yeah, you have to drag it down.
Okay.
Hold on, don't move too fast.
Wait, drag it back.
Okay, we're going back in Excel now. And now we have this formula, right? So we're locking in here our range. We're soft coding our criterion. And now we can basically just go again on that right lower corner where the cursor changes, and we're double clicking it. And that will complete the entire range all the way down. And if you click now on, let's click all together on F14, because F14 has still the locked in range, still the same range, hasn't changed, hasn't moved. But what has changed is here the criterion. And the criterion is now that criterion of the respective row you're in. So this is why we needed to lock it, hard code it, and keep it fixed. What is now also interesting in this regard, you can also now drag this formula down or upwards, because now the first two entries are also hard coded. Okay. Yes.
We want to drag it up.
Upwards, because the first two were manually coded.
Oh, we can drag.
You can just complete it. Okay, but I hope everybody sees that this is a very, very useful function, because you can do the same thing with names, categorical variables. You just quantify how often that value occurs and use it for the creation of a frequency table. Good. Any questions? You can also watch the recording. Hmm?
You put the, unless we close it.
This one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
So now we're gonna go back to the PowerPoint next, once you have completed the code. We put it back on the PowerPoint. Got it? Okay, so this is a frequency table that we just did. So this is your first frequency table. You've completed it up all the way down to 17. So this is the instructions. This is, so they're not doing it. They don't explain how to do it in Excel. It's just in my head. It makes sense to explain you how to do it in Excel. So we have 1 with 17, we have the 14 with 1. And this basically gets us now this frequency table. And now it's getting interesting, because once you have these frequencies, what is the next thing that you want to do? You want to see how does that distribute in terms of percentages. How do we calculate percentages? Somebody remember?
How times equals
Because it's a smaller number, so that the fraction divided by the overall number multiplied by 100 gives you the percentage, right? So if you go back to Excel, you go back to the frequency table and you write percentage, you have now equals sign, frequency of the first entry.
is what you write in there.
Yep, that's F2. Yep. For 14, it's F2. Divided, and this is the slash. So you know you have asterisk as a multiplication, slash is a division. So now you divide it by the sum of all volcanoes for all the countries that have less or equal than 17 volcanoes. And that sum can easily be computed by SUM for sum, parentheses, $F, $2, colon, $F, $18. You see? It's sum $F, $2, colon, $F, $18 for the last entry. Sorry, actually not F, my bad. It's E, sorry. $E, $2. No, it's not. $E, $18. So now you have here. Yes.
And why is it E and not F?
So you do F2. Now you do E2 divided by sum of $E, $2, colon, $E, $18. Why? So this is the one, right? So you have 14 volcanoes that have 14 countries with one volcano. You divide it by the sum of all volcanoes. And this is all entries Oh no, sorry, forget what I just said. Actually, this is actually not, hold on. 14. It's the countries. 27. I actually arithmetically disagree because it's countries. Okay. So we have 14 divided by, it's F, you're right, it's F, yeah. Yeah, F, yeah. So it's, yes, it's $F, $2, $F, $F, $18. Because this is the value, this is the criterion, right? So this is the actual frequency. So these are the number of countries. The percentage refers to the number of countries, not to the number of values, right? Just that mechanism.
How do you know they use the dollar sign?
Because so this numerator again needs to change because you want to have the proportion of countries, which is 14, of the entire group. So this is always, you want that proportional value divided by the whole number of countries. So the sum basically quantifies all the countries that have been quantified, which is B2 to $B2 to $B52. So that's 51 countries. Yes.
Can you explain again why F and not B? Can you explain again why F and not B?
Because with F you have the countries. So just think about it as you need a numerator and a denominator. The numerator is the respective number of countries for that value. The denominator is essentially the sum of all countries. And the countries are here quantified in the frequency. I just got mixed up. Well, my bad. This is the problem with evening teaching, but sometimes lose concentration. Okay, so now we have this percentage, and since we no, actually it's a proportion. So the difference between a proportion and the percentage is that the percentage is being multiplied by 100. So if we now want to remedy that, we would make this a proportion. Command X. With Command X, you can move things. Command X or Control X in Windows. X, yeah. Command and X will allow you to move. Command and C, like Caesar, allows you to copy. And with Command and V, you paste it. With Command V, you go in the respective cell and then you press Command V like Victor. Yep. All right, so if we want to get to a percentage now, we need to multiply this value by 100. So we're writing equal sign, G2 multiplied by 100. That's a proportion. Yes, if it's not multiplied by 100, it's a proportion. Important distinction. E2 divided by the sum of $E2. No, I'll show you the formula. $E, $2, colon, $E, $18. That's the proportion. Yeah, no, we changed it from F to E. It's E, not F. Oh, F. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Thanks for calling me out. Yes, it's F, not E. F2 divided by sum logged in F2 to F18 gives you the frequency of the countries that contain a certain number of volcanoes. Good. And that's the problem with data analytics. Is actually, so this is the prime example. You always got to be double checking yourself. Errors are made super easy, and they have ramifications. They have tremendous ramifications because an error that you make 6 months ago, an analysis that is like 3,000 lines of code, it has ramifications, tremendous ramifications. So double check everything you do. That's was the living example here. Okay, so we have now these logged in. We have it multiplied.
Percentage, what's the formula for percentage?
It's G2 multiplied by 100.
Yeah, can you do like the dollars? How many you have to do for each individual one?
Well, we have the dollar sign. We have it locked in already.
Oh,
But we're getting to the finale. Slowly but surely. Just make sure to log it in correctly. Yes, proportional percentage. Percentage. Just multiplied by 100. G2 multiplied by 100. That's it. G2 asterisk 100. Yes.
It's okay, mine's giving me like 0.28 and 20. Like rounding up.
Yeah, so you just gotta expand a little bit. So if you go on top of the on the header of the column, and you see where this cursor changes again, you double click it, it will expand it.
No, I just dragged.
Yeah, so if you make this smaller, I will round it. Not a big deal, not a big, no, well, but thank you for bringing that up, because it's actually a good conversation piece. Because now if we go back to our G2 multiplied by 100, and so now focus on this here now. We can actually introduce a new function now, and we do round. And we tell Excel to round for us. So rounding is super easy. So you basically just write round. In parentheses, you have the number of interest, which is here your multiplied value. And at the end of the formula, you essentially write comma. How many digits? Not more than 2, right? Who needs to know that much individual specifics? So you basically have now rounded your number to 2 decimals.
Equals round, what is it?
Hold on. So now we do F2 $F $18, and this is equal round G2 multiplied by 100, comma 2 parentheses. Yep. No, you can do it. You do it already. It's part of the formula. So you go here and you enter it here. So this is the formula I want you to write. Round G2 multiplied by 100, comma 2. Rounds it to 2 decimals. Nobody needs more than 2 decimals in percentages. Yes.
For the proportion, you would do 14 over 17? Like
18. 18. The last entry is 18. So you have 16 and 18.
Wait, why 18?
Because this is in row 18.
Oh,
There's another country here. There was Vanuatu.
because I thought that was it count because it was like the head.
No, it's 18. Okay, so this is the rounding. So everything here, okay, so we have the count if function here. We're running it against our entire data series. We have the proportion here. We're calculating 14, the respective entry in the row, over the sum of all the countries quantified, which is 51 countries. So this is $2 and $F2, $F8, $18. Then we're summing it up. We calculate the proportion. We're multiplying by 100. We bring it from a proportion to a percentage, and we're rounding it to 2 decimals. Easy, right? So now, now comes the finale. We're basically selecting proportion and percentage. And we're going on the right lower corner. And we're double clicking and we're completing our analysis. Simple, right? I had hope for my agreement. Yes, yes, anybody, yeah.
Mine was a longer question. Okay, just how, we didn't lock in those values, like how does it?
You don't need to. So these here will automatically, they're just taking this value, multiplying it by 100, and then taking the 2. The 2 will not change. This formula will not change.
So what does the G2 change?
Yeah, G3,
So how does
G4.
the node change?
Well, it does it automatically. That's why you're locking it, because you want it to prevent. Exactly, because you want to prevent the changing. Yeah, so it's the inverse. It's the inverse logic. Yep.
So for the proportion, you're trying to figure out how, like, I don't understand what the proportion, what it means in terms of the.
All right. Okay. If you cut the cake in 8 parts, you're dividing it in 8 different parts, right? You take one part, which is essentially 1/8 of that cake. If you calculate 1 divided by 8, you get the percentage of the overall cake that one slice of that cake or one piece of that cake is.
The percentage of that.
Yeah, it's 1/8 is 1 divided by 8.
Right.
So 1 divided by 8 is 0.125.
That's the proportion.
And this multiplied by 8 gets you back to 1. And 1 is all, this multiplied by 8 is 1. So this is how you calculate percentages.
In terms of this list, so for the 14, so there was.
So we have 51 countries, right?
Right.
We have 51 countries, and we want to know 14. We divide 14 divided by 51 is our 27. Yeah. This is, yeah.
Aren't
Yep.
there 56 countries?
So this is yeah. Maybe this is something to revisit. It's yep. So yeah, so this is how you quantify proportions. Then you get from proportions up to percentages. Please do me a favor and review this in books that you may have at your disposition, because this will be very essential when we come to probabilities. This is understanding that is kind of a prerequisite for probabilities. Okay, so you want a proportion. You're calculating that number, that fraction of the whole that you're interested in, and you divide it by the number as a whole. Then you get your proportion. Multiplying it by 100 gets you the percentage. For probability, this will be important, because in probabilities you quantify the same word in the same way. You roll a dice, and you want a 6. The probability of rolling a 6 is 1/6 for that very reason. It's the same concept, and you quantify probabilities also on a range from 0 to 1, because you don't have more than 100% probability of something to happen. Although sometimes we're using that in a wrong way, but the probability cannot exceed 100%. And we will deal quite a bit with probabilities. So please just review your books in that regard. Okay, good. So these are the frequency tables. I think we're now, it's hot again, right? I don't know. Last time it was nice, now it's hot again. Okay, we're back to frequency tables. So now we want to group this. So that's the next step, right? The logical next step. So we have now from 0 to 18. You want to make things easy interpretable. And for that very reason, you just take the next step. You're grouping it now in different groups. And this basically, now it's getting a little bit more tricky, because now we need 2 criteria, not just 1. So we will do this. We will do this. Okay, group frequency tables basically define a certain interval of data, of ranges that you're interested in. And if we're quantifying now our volcanoes in the same fashion, and we're saying now we are interested, so this is now our interval, and we're interested in 0 to 5, in 6 to 10, not 0, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 16 to 20. So now these are our intervals, and now we want the counts. So how can you quantify that? Easy, right? You just need to calculate the sum of 1 to 5. Oh, sum equals sum of these 5 entries. Gives you the sum.
Some of the
Can we go over the formula again?
Sum equals on sum,
yeah.
and you select these 5 entries for 1 to 5. So you're interested in 14, 12, 4, 5, and 4. So this is your sum.
Yeah, F2 to F6.
F2 to F6, yes.
And what is this called? What's that count?
That is counts, yes.
Yeah, what is that? What is that represent?
You can also call it frequency.
No.
So now there's a little bit of an advanced version of that, and we will just now quickly talk about this. And this we're gonna do, if you press only the equal sign, you get up here an equal sign popping up. You see this? And here's an FX. Can you click on the FX here? And now you want to write count ifs. Ifs with an S in the end. And if you double click that count ifs, you have again, it asks you for a range. This is your reference. And you remember the reference is $B, $2, colon, $B, $52. Okay?
Very small.
So this is criteria range 1.
We add criteria.
Yeah, and now you want to define the first criterion. So you just enter $B, $2, colon, $B, $52. And now you want to have the first criterion. There are no parentheses involved. So this is the formula builder. When you click on that FX, you will get to the actual interface to build this formula. And there's a reason why I'm doing it with the formula builder as opposed to typing it. The FX. Click on the FX. You're on a Windows computer, yeah, and that's fine. Just find count ifs.
I searched here. So I can.
Count ifs.
Yeah, yeah, I can go.
Count if.
I put count ifs up here and then it said it's not real.
Come on. So just type in the formula builder when you. Yep.
You do one search or you don't?
Well, you search them. If you go back to the formula builder, you just type it here in the search field. You type count ifs. It will find it for you as a formula.
Why did you add an S to the count if?
Because it's now more than one criterion.
So now you're adding another.
Exactly. Because we're doing a grouped frequency table, which has a lower bound and upper bound.
How did you get to that formula builder?
you go to FX on the left top.
Yeah, and then
And now you type count ifs.
didn't show me like.
Well, there should be on the right side, there should be a formula builder popping up. So if you close it, you just go here, FX. This opens up. It looks different, but you just overwrite whatever's written there and you write count ifs. It gives you the same mask in a way. You're in Windows, right? It looks a little different. Don't worry about it. It's the same thing. Yeah, just write the count ifs
Yeah.
and press enter. It will give you the formula, then you can open this formula. We're getting there. So the range one is $B, $2, $B, $52, colon, we do $B, $2, to colon, $B, $52. So that's the range. Now it does it automatically. And now we're adding a criterion, and the criterion is greater than 1. Greater sign 1. And actually, let's do greater than 0. That's more intuitive. Or and then you make a second criterion, which is smaller than 6.
Yeah, the apostrophe.
Oh, hold on. No, now forget the second criterion. We're gonna do this differently. We do an ampersand smaller than 6. Yeah.
And then I click done.
Okay, let's scrap this idea. Yeah, don't worry, this takes too long to go over this. Okay, so now we do count ifs. We're gonna do count. Yeah, now we will. Let's scrap the count ifs idea. Okay, let's do count 6 to 10, which is now the second interval. Then we do count 11 to 15. We're just going to do it manually.
Are you able to do it?
Yes, you can do it with the count ifs, but it's getting to dilute it at this point. Yep. So you do count F7 to count F7 to F11 will give you 6 to 10. Will give you the range from 6 to 10. Okay. So you basically what you're selecting is 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. You're selecting all frequencies from 6 to 10. Okay. And this is how you complete this. And then you end up with a frequency table that looks like this. Okay.
Can we drag it down, or we have to do the whole?
No, we cannot drag. With the count ifs it would have worked, but that's let's forget about that. I need to carry on, otherwise we're not getting so much done. Okay. So this is essentially how you do a grouped frequency table that essentially is here. So Norton and Heinz used a different range, but basically you're just bulking your frequency table to smaller buckets, or larger buckets, essentially. Larger buckets with more entries. So the reason of why you do all of this is because you want to create something that is called a histogram. So here you have an outline how you can do a histogram by hand, and you're welcome to do it by hand for the homework because you will be doing histograms. I got some brand new examples, some very nice examples now. Alternatively, and this is essentially how you should be doing it in Excel, and I'm showing you this here now. You build graphs by essentially clicking on Insert.
So what are we highlighting the first?
You're highlighting the values and the frequencies from the first to the last entry.
You also highlight the word values.
No, not for now. And you click on, this should be, this one. Yep. You are selecting from the first entry to the last entry the values and the counts from 1 to 17 and the respective count of countries. Then you go on charts, and there's with the bar charts, you will find something that is called histogram. And the histogram is what you want to essentially build.
Where do you find the chart?
Chart is with insert.
Is that the first
It is the second one. This is pizza. Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to define now here F2. We are defining here for the Y values, we're defining our frequencies. For the horizontal axis, we're defining the values. The first one.
insert? Yeah. Something that looks like a table.
Okay. So command back, we're gonna label B2 to B52. But let's do actually B52. B2 to B52. And now go on insert and build the histogram from there. So this gives you that overview that we just did.
Can you go ahead and get a chart? What with the line on?
So you select B2 to B52. That gets you this histogram.
We don't do it here, selecting the value.
No, do it with the raw data. I don't use Excel much, so that's why I get, when it comes to graphs in Excel, I get kind of a trip over myself. You go on insert and you go on bar graph, and there should be an option to build a histogram. All right. So this is how you do histograms. The histograms, if you do it by individual entries, it basically presents as that. Can we still focus for a minute more? Thank you. So this is how it basically will present. So you have the counts on the y-axis, you have the individual entries on the x-axis. You can further, yeah. Okay. So this essentially is a frequency distribution. This is where you basically will see how often each individual value occurs. And this will, in a more granular form, show as a so-called normal distribution, which would present as such. So a typical normal distribution presents itself as a symmetric distribution, which is kind of a bell curve, as opposed to a skewed distribution. So this is a perfect normal distribution, which basically is bell-shaped curve and symmetric with tails on each side. This can also be positively or negatively skewed, where basically you are seeing a skewness of your data that essentially reflects either a flooring effect, meaning that the lower values are essentially kind of a barrier, and there are more frequencies with lower values. Classical examples, for example, household incomes in the US, or a negative skew, which skews to the negative values, which basically has a ceiling effect to the upper levels. Typical example, class grades in the statistics class. These are the examples you will see in the practice quizzes. This all being said, then lastly, we're going to talk about the depiction of dot plots when you have individual entries. Here shown with mean years of education globally, where you basically have individual dots for each entries. It's a very uncommon way of displaying data, but you get a dot for each entry for that value. Histograms are more intuitive, and histograms are the more common form to show data because you can also show it as percentages. And this is all what I had for today. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Yes.
Okay, for this,
All right.
I lost the usual count and I got this one wrong. And I did the count F16 to F3 and I got 3 and you got 2 on yours.
You just need to sum it. It's a sum, not a count.
Oh, but,
No, it's
so
a
they
sum.
were all sums?
Yeah, they're all sums, yeah, because these are individual frequency entries.
Okay.
Yep, you just want the frequency in that bucket, right? And that's why you need to sum it rather than count. I know, it's.
I also, thank you.
Thank you. What's your question?
She's actually, okay, so I asked
Oh,
you.
nice. Okay.
Oh, thank you. I asked you about mine was just saying the 28, and then I tried dragging it.
Well, you
It
can,
wasn't working.
this is just a standard setting. So you can also do a right click on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like that.
No, right clicking. Right clicking. You need to change. You need to change the format.
The formula?
So, don't you have a right click? No, right. Oh, yeah. Here on format cells, you can reformat it to a number with 2 decimals.
Oh, okay.
I'm not really sure what. Oh,
See,
this is
this
what.
is point
Then you need to change. How did it? Yes, yes. Okay. Very confusing. So you can change it here to 4 decimals. That's interesting.
Oh, got it. But also, 0, 0, 0.
I don't understand why that is. Oh, you missed one.
I missed it. No, mine was just a little. Mine went. I started at F3 instead of F2, like you.
Yeah, but you missed one. The last one was missing. The lowest entry was missing. That's all
Here I
about.
got 9, and I did the sum of F8 to F12 just because mine were different.
Yeah, but you need to pick again 6 to 10.
I think I got 9 also. I didn't pick my
What's your problem?
Oh, I want to know how to install R.
Oh,
Because I
well, I need to teach another class now. So
I was wondering if you do.
there's an installation video. Did you try? Did you watch the installation video?
I don't know where it is. I clicked on the link and it took me to
It's on Canvas.
I know. I was on Canvas and I clicked reset and it took me like this page full of links that I don't like.
So there should be an installation video under the prerequisites.
Right, so this is the page it took me to. So
No, that's not it. It should be here.
it says how to install
Yeah.
R and it takes me. It says the page does not exist.
Oh, the
and it
link is
takes me
through.
here.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
So you're able to
Thank you for letting me know. Yes, I put it up. Thank you. Hi.
Open this in Excel.
This is numbers, right?
Yeah, but how do I'm sorry, I have this.
Yep. Make a right click on it. Right click. Now you need a right click. We need to define how to open it.
Right, it's weird.
Yeah, you need a right click. So there's a left click and a right click. Just, oh yeah, here, open with, you go on other. You always open it with, do you have Excel installed?
Yeah, I think.
No, it's not.
No?
Then you need to open it. Either you need to install Excel or you need to load it into Office 365.
How do I do that?
Why you need to contact it, why you need to refer.
No, I already did that. So how do I open this in?
Yeah, you need to upload it to your OneDrive to essentially have it at your disposition in your online cloud.
And if I want to open it in Excel, it's like why you already got it.
Why you didn't install it?
But do I buy it? Because when I tried to install it, it said like it needs to be.
I don't know. So YU is offering you Office 365.
So I should use that.
That's free to use for you. Yeah.
So I kind of confused at this end of the class.
Hmm?
I was kind of confused at the end of the class. You say we have homework for next class?
There's no homework.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was or
No,
not.
no, no, no worries, no worries, no worries. Hi.
Hi, I'm in the class right now at this time, but I just want to let you know I have an appointment in an hour, so I might have to leave a couple minutes.
That's right. No worries.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Welcome back. All right.
I have this one.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. That's where you need to upload it. You need to upload it to your OneDrive, and from there you will be able to start it then.
The file.